Stangibelisco here, proprietor and operator of amateur radio station W1GV Whiskey 1 Golf Victor at your service with another Murphy's Nemesis story. One day I got it into my head to take a little Hustler mobile radio antenna and mount it directly on top of my transceiver. Now this again was back in the 1970s when I seemed to do all this stuff. And I cut down a mast only about a foot long and put a 20-meter Hustler resonator on top of that mast. Fabricated my own little base insulator and just stuck that thing right on top of an old Hallicrafter's FPM Frank Papa Mike 300, FPM 300 SSB transceiver. Kind of a neat little radio that was. It was all solid state except for the final amplifier and I believe also for the driver. But anyway, the thing put out about 100 watts. And I put 100 watts into this little antenna sticking right on top of the radio, sitting right in front of my face. I guess back in those days they weren't real concerned about RF exposure criteria because I was getting a full dose. Anyway, I sat in my bedroom with a clear shot to the south. Of course, had to go through the window and through the wall of the frame house, but I worked a guy in Texas. I lived in Minnesota at the time. I worked a guy in Texas, and he told me I was 20 dB over S9. Murphy looked at that and said, "Son, I don't know what I'm going to do with you." Anyway, I'll sort of show you the theory and why it shouldn't work maybe, and you can figure out why it shouldn't work. But it did. Well, here's the basic arrangement in color-enhanced schematic form. There's the radio, a Hallicrafter's FPM 300. I don't think they made a whole lot of those radios, but I remember using it as a mobile radio, and it was kind of a neat thing. Wasn't really very good on CW, but it was a fine sideband radio. And back then I actually did get on single sideband now and then. So I took a Hustler resonator, that's this upper part of the antenna right here. A Hustler resonator for 14 megahertz. And stuck it on top of a mast that was only about 1 foot long. And then I believe I used a porcelain light fixture of the sort that you might find in the closet of your house, especially if it's an old house. Just a thing where I fabricated a good insulator and just stuck that thing on top of the radio with, I don't know, double stick tape or something, just so it wouldn't fall off. The whole thing here was less than 3 feet or 1 meter high. It sat right on the radio. Here's the microphone. And there is YT, yours truly, yammering into the microphone, spewing 100 watts of RF all over the place, including right through his head. Undoubtedly, that's why I am such a nerd today. Of course, I was a nerd before then, too. Well, I don't know. Murphy might be able to explain that. If something can go wrong with your head, it will. Then again, I'm Murphy's nemesis, so even if something should go wrong, it won't. Maybe I'm sane despite that business there. I guess I'm sane. Oh, gee, I mean, everybody thinks they're sane, but this is kind of an insane idea. You'd think I would have had RF in the shack problems because I really didn't have that radio grounded except through the cord that plugged into the wall, a 3-wire cord. That was the only ground that this radio had, so it didn't even have a ground. So you'd think I would have got burnt. I guess it was a plastic microphone. But anyway, I don't remember this radio exhibiting a whole lot of RF in the shack trouble when I did this. I do remember I was facing south, sitting there with that antenna in front of me, looking right out my bedroom window at the neighbors across the street, and thence on down south through the ionosphere to Texas, where the guy gave me a 20 dB over 9 signal report, and he was also about 20 dB over 9. So we yammered for a while at each other. I told him about that thing, and I guess he wasn't surprised. This is ham radio after all. Ham radio is Murphy's Nemesis. Stan Gibilisco saying 73 and so long.